What's up, everyone on YouTube? This is Louis Hat Trends, aka L25, aka Louis JM. Today I'm just gonna do a little something differently. I have a Zoom page right here where me and a few of my friends, my cousin, and my brother-in-law are gonna discuss a certain topic. So I'm gonna start introducing you to some of these people. First, my good friend Richard Cubero, really big wrestling fan, kind of like myself. Say hi, Rich.
What's up?
Then we have my good old Y Arts colleague, good friend for the Y Arts Hankering for More program, Jimmy Tucker. Jimmy?
Hi.
Next up, my good old cousin from Miami, Florida, who's also a big-time wrestling fan, Robert Quitina.
It's Quintana, but
Quintana, right. My bad. And last but certainly not least, my brother-in-law, and also somewhat of a wrestling fan, watches a few shows on rare occasions, but follows the news. Peter Chimansky.
Afternoon. How's it going?
Okay, so as we all gather here today, we're going to talk about a certain thing that's been going on as of late, the COVID-19, and how it affected the whole wrestling community. Now, as you're all welcome to share your own opinions of what I'm going to say, so let's just get started, okay? All right. So, as you all know, back in mid-March, a couple of months ago, the COVID-19 pandemic started. It started to spread across the U.S. Many businesses shut down, entertainment industry shut down, concerts postponing their shows, movies postponing, and of course the conventions canceling on a day-by-day basis. But the one thing that is currently having an issue is the whole wrestling thing, because as you know, sporting events such as basketball, hockey, baseball, football during March, they all had to shut down. They all had to postpone their seasons. They had to wait it out until this whole pandemic thing passes or a vaccine is created or whatnot. But the only thing that hadn't been postponed, at least on the most part, is the wrestling. Now, we all know that, well, some of us know, that both New Japan and Ring of Honor had to cancel their events or postpone them and wait it out until the whole pandemic. But two other specific shows, two other wrestling industries that haven't decided to postpone anything, and that is the AEW, All Elite Wrestling, and the WWE, World Wrestling Entertainment. The reason as to why is because All Elite Wrestling is a new venture. It started out last year, and considering the whole pandemic, they cannot afford to postpone, or they might go out of business. So they had to continue on with their shows in Daly's place in Jacksonville, Florida, and keep it going until crowds return. Though I've been hearing that in All Out, they're already having a certain amount of crowds in a bit of a social distance area. Now, as far as WWE is concerned, is that they had to continue with their show even despite the whole pandemic. But the issue of that part is that they had been covering up the idea that there is such thing as pandemic or COVID-19. They kept it on the DL, and they even have to decide to make their company an essential business apart from the hospitals, supermarkets, and pharmacies, who had to remain open to help deliver medicine and groceries and whatnot. Though a company like WWE wanting to open as an essential business seems a bit baffling, because they have plenty of content on their WWE network. They could at least postpone and have an off season and maybe go on and have like classic Raws or SmackDowns or pay-per-views, but they still kept going. I want to give you guys opinions. Do you feel like that WWE is trying to keep this show going even if a pandemic is still going on? Guys, do you have your personal thoughts?
Yeah, well, with me, lately I've been seeing on Raw and SmackDown that instead of a live audience, you see like these virtual audiences, like virtual walls. You see all these screens with people on their Zoom accounts, just watching the show. And I mean, just looking at it makes you think like you're in some kind of big security office or the Pentagon for that matter, because you feel like you're monitoring all these people at once. But yeah, but back to what you were saying, that it was kind of baffling that they're declaring that the WWE is being declared their events as an essential business. I mean, considering the billions of dollars that they make every year, I mean, I don't really see how it's considered essential, to go to a wrestling event. I mean, in an arena when you could just watch it on TV or virtually through Zoom, like we're seeing nowadays.
Yeah, you're referring to the Thunderdome, right?
Yeah, and even one of the episodes that was being demoed that my dad came upon, just out of the blue, he was telling to my mom, "Look at this. You're seeing the future right here," and that made me think. I mean, is this could this be like the new way to experience a live event? Because there are some pros and cons to it. Like the pro is that if you're seeing it virtually, you don't have to worry about somebody spreading something to you or sitting next to someone that you feel a little uncomfortable next to and all that. But then of course there's the con to it, that you don't really get that live experience that you would through Zoom, because like last year when I went to WrestleMania with Louis and Pete, I mean,
And Richard, don't forget Richard.
yeah, and with Richard, sorry. I mean, that's just something that you couldn't get virtually, because the fanfare, the loud music, the pyrotechnics, that's basically a once in a lifetime thing that you can't replicate virtually. So I don't I don't really see how doing this virtually is going to be a good thing from here on out.
Well, you're talking about the whole Thunderdome and the virtual screens, but before we had that, they started to move their wrestling shows, be that of Raw or SmackDown, or even any of the pay-per-views they set up into SummerSlam, into the Performance Center. And when they were starting, they had to have an empty arena type environment. And to me, it feels a little awkward over the fact, because in hindsight, you need these said crowds to build up the energy. You need them to cheer, boo someone who comes out of the entrance. You need the shock and awe of a bump or an injury or any particular moment out there. But when they started doing empty arenas, when they brought forth this empty, quiet area, it makes you feel like that it doesn't have much of an oomph to it. To me, it was a bit awkward. So much so that I had to go on YouTube and search for like SoundCloud samples for an hour to make it feel like that there's like an arena full of fans, when in reality there isn't.
Yeah.
Then, were you going to say something?
Major League Baseball has also been doing, because I've seen like a few MLB games where some of the seats are occupied with cardboard cutouts of people. In a way that's both funny and awkward, but I mean, there were actual people there as well, but it's just awkward.
Yeah, and don't forget that when they were doing like home runs and stuff, they have like CGI crowds doing the cheering. I haven't seen it yet, though. It does feel like that this is like desperation in a way.
It is kind of weird. I mean, I never heard of them doing like a CGI to make up for people. I mean, I think like you should like I don't know. I know people want to get back to like how things was before, but if it's not like safe for people to be in close quarters together, then there shouldn't be live events. It's gonna take time to like for people to like feel safe and for people to feel comfortable being around each other in big crowds again. But I also feel, like when I see like award shows for like movies or music, and they do this whole different format now, it's so upsetting because, I like seeing people on TV and the reactions, but it's so different now. I know that we have to live in like this new world where like things aren't going to be the way it used to be. But as far as like entertainment goes, like in wrestling or TV shows or movies, yeah, people shouldn't be grouped together or go to those events until like we're certain it's safe for people to be together.
Yeah, I've seen. I mean, I haven't watched the VMAs this year, but they did something unique in a way. I mean, from what I understand, they still did it in the Barclays Center, but they have like all of the CGI backdrops, and they had performers performing with face masks and social distancing. Thankfully, Lady Gaga is like a strong example. But
when I saw that performance, with both Ariana Grande, Lady Gaga wearing masks and dressed in all purple, I immediately pictured Melina from Mortal Kombat. I don't know why. It just popped into my head. Like the same thing, if they were wearing blue, you would think Kitana, or if they were wearing green, you would think of Jade, I'm guessing they did that on purpose, as a homage, but in a way, it kind of added to the performance, and it also set a good example, killing two birds with one stone. If I can wear a mask while performing on stage in a huge award show, there's no reason why you can't do it in a public setting.
And we have to we have to take what we can get, even if it's not like the way it used to be. We have to, what's that word? We have to adjust and I guess accept what it is now for the time being, and even if it takes a while for things to get back, at least people in the entertainment business are trying to make it as, I guess, comfortable as before to be like, so we can be entertained, even if it's not the same as it was before.
Yeah, of course, even though our daily routine has shifted drastically from here on out, it's gonna take. I mean, this isn't gonna last forever,
Well, at least until there's like a vaccine.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, because even if they do come out with a vaccine, it's still gonna take time to perfect, because vaccine development takes years and years of research and development. It's not something that you could do overnight, even though a lot of pharmaceutical companies were trying to develop the vaccine overnight, considering how serious this virus was. It was even more serious than the swine flu, Ebola, and Zika put together.
Well, I do want to mention what you stated before when you, me, Pete, and Richard went to see WrestleMania, and to be fair, it was pretty good. I mean, it had its moments, it had its pyro. Sure, a couple of matches were a bit questionable, hint, Corbin versus Kurt Angle. But you enjoy it because it had the energy, the feel, the environment. It had all of the things that meant for what WrestleMania should be, the grandest spectacle of them all. But unfortunately for this year, that when the pandemic happened and it hit the US, it was during the time when they were on the road to WrestleMania. And the original plan was to have it in the J Stadium in Tampa, Florida. The one with the huge pirate ship. It was all going to be pirate themed. I've seen like concept entrances.
Because that's where it had the pirate theme, because that's where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play. So they wanted to incorporate that. But of course, the virus comes and they had to postpone it.
But they didn't really postpone it in a way. Instead, they moved it from that stadium to the Performance Center in general. And to me, it felt a little cheap. Like they're trying to force the WrestleMania idea, and yet they are trying to make it feel like it was WrestleMania, when in reality it wasn't. To me, WrestleMania is all about the pyro, the big elaborate entrances, the performances, pretty much everything and anything that is necessary. But when I saw this year's WrestleMania, it felt less like a huge show and more like a glorified empty house show without an audience to be incorporating to it.
Yeah, because the elements that make a WWE event what it is just weren't there.
Yeah, and it kind of hurt a lot of people because they paid a lot to go, not only go to WrestleMania, but to go to conventions, go to WrestleMania Access, to partake in a week-long wrestling event that happens once a year. But now that when they moved it down to the Performance Center, all of the wrestling conventions had to cancel because of the whole pandemic. Hell, we have one person here that was planning to go to Jacksonville, Florida to experience WrestleMania a second time. Richard, can you unmute yourself? I want to ask you something quickly.
Okay.
Richard, you told me that your uncle bought you tickets to see WrestleMania in Tampa. You had pretty much every ticket imaginable to go to, like, conventions, to go to WrestleMania Access, to plan this week for yourself and your uncle in a way. But then when news broke out that the pandemic affected WrestleMania, where they had to move to the Performance Center and all the events were immediately canceled and refunded tickets, that that it was devastating to a lot of people. What about you? What did you feel when WrestleMania couldn't do Jacksonville and all the conventions got canceled, when you had to refund all those tickets?
Pretty much I was totally in shock.
Mm-hmm. Still.
And it was still, they couldn't postpone the show.
You felt like that they would have just canceled, postponed it, wait until like the summer, like where would they have like a bit, where they have a bit more time, where we would have had the WrestleMania in the Thunderdome?
I thought they were gonna put it for next year.
No, that is true. I mean, WrestleMania is like a once-a-year event, but considering, given the current circumstances, they already had like certain big matches. You have the Drew McIntyre versus Brock Lesnar for the WWE Championship. You had Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the NXT Championship. You had supposed matches such as the Roman Reigns versus Goldberg and a spear versus spear for the Universal Championship. The John Cena Fiend Bray Wyatt match. You had Shayna Baszler and Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship. Those were those types of matches that deserve the crowd reactions and all that. But considering they moved it to Performance Center, even if the matches were good, it didn't had the WrestleMania moments. It was pretty much wasted.
Yes, it was.
In short, the whole thing was a dud.
I mean, even so, I mean, there were some good moments at WrestleMania. I mean, you have Otis getting the girl. You had Charlotte Flair winning the NXT Championship, which was a bit of a shock, but it was understandable trying to get ratings for AEW against AEW. And of course, the big thing that everyone was talking about were those self-proclaimed cinematic matches. The Boneyard match between AJ Styles and Undertaker, and the Firefly Funhouse between John Cena and the Fiend Bray Wyatt. You've got to admit, though, it is quite interesting to see what is going on. But still, the moments were wasted. There was no audience. Even if they say that they were going to bring smiles to people's faces because everyone was at home, the wrestlers should have been at home and just wait it out. Have an off season. Consider your health and well-being. So it was somewhat wasteful in a way.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how many of the WWE or AEW superstars came down with COVID and an event had to be postponed because of it.
Well,
if
there
they
was
could have passed it on to another superstar or a referee or someone in backstage, it would have been a chain reaction.
Well, there was this one time in June, like during the whole backlash, that that there was an outbreak in the performance center. You had like a cluster of people that got infected and were tested positive. One of those people was, of course, Dean Ambrose's wife, who had COVID and made that announcement that she was tested positive, which unfortunately the WWE didn't like, because they want to keep this in a private setting, at least not let anyone know that they were tested positive. And it was a bit cheap and childish the way they handle it.
Yeah, why would they want to keep it private? I mean, when there are other professional leagues where the athletes have made their diagnosis public, and that they had to postpone or cancel their season because of it.
It is kind of understandable, but it did feel like that they had to let people know that the COVID is out there. Hell, in AEW, they mentioned the COVID virus a lot. They had people wear face masks. They had people getting tested, temperature checks, swabs, whatever. WWE, on the other hand, well, they didn't do any of that. Only thing they did is temperature checks, questionnaires, and they don't let the performance center people and the supposed family and friends go in without a face mask, because they feel like it muffles up the cheers. And under certain circumstances, you need a face mask to go about your daily life. Hell, I wear a face mask whenever I have to help at the funeral home. I had a face mask on whenever I go out, whether I had to get my hair cut or go to the parks or go anywhere. I need my face mask at all times, because you don't know who is infected within those certain areas of people.
Yeah, and same here. I mean, I have to wear a face mask at my job because I'm constantly around so many people. I mean, I work at an Amazon fulfillment center, and every time I go in, they do a temperature check on me, and I'm wearing a mask. And for those that don't have masks, they provide us the blue disposable face masks for us.
It's
and
true.
Of course, I wear one when going out as well, like to the supermarket or some other place where you say you can't go in unless you're wearing a face mask.
Yeah, I mean, the rest of you wear face masks too, right? You think it would have been better if WWE handled the face mask thing sooner rather than just wait it out later?
I think everybody needs to wear a face mask. I don't like seeing when people don't wear face masks. I feel like they're not taking it seriously. Like people aren't being affected by the virus. You have to wear your face mask. Because they say it's I don't know, something coming from your mouth, I think, like spit or something, or like that's how people are getting sick. I don't know, something having to do with the mouth, I think. But I met the face coverage is for other people's protection, and it's for your protection. So why not wear it? Because you're putting other people's health at risk. So I'm a very big supporter of wearing a mask, and I just get people like a mean look when I don't see them wear a mask, because I'm like, wow, like you're acting like that, like this whole time, like the world's not like falling apart. So why aren't you wearing a mask?
Yeah. Though I do appreciate AEW for handling the situation as it were, because when the virus hit, even if they had to continue on with the shows, at least they made it clear that the COVID is out there, that it's all too real. That the fact that they had to not only put it in Daily's place, but they had to postpone a certain amount of matches. Like, say, for example, Pete, we were supposed to go to Newark to see AEW for the first time and be a part of the whole Blood and Guts event, the whole War Games, where there's like the two cells and you had both the Elite and the Inner Circle pitting against each other. when the COVID hit, they had no other option than to go to, say, their little warehouse training facility at first, and then Daly's place. But also postponed Blood and Guts until like a particular later date. So what do you think? What do you think that AEW did the right decision in postponing a certain match, even if they had to continue on with their shows?
They wanted that match to take place in front of an audience. So they did the right call of holding it off, and I believe they want it to take place in front of the New York crowd or a crowd that's similar because they want it to go over well. So they're showing patience in some of their ideas, obviously. That's why they came up with, for their pay-per-view, to do that Stadium Stampede the last time around, because they could do a 30, 35-minute recorded, properly edited type of like very absurd match structure, right? And they took advantage of that moment. So they're thinking outside the box more in that way. And I think it's helping them out by showing that level of patience, by trimming down their angles so that they can only work on the type of TV that they're doing. So they're doing less, they're not going to build up to steel cage matches or ladder matches or a lot of crazy stuff like that, because you're not going to have the ability to do that in front of a crowd. Instead, keep it for something that's either going to be straightforward. Even the timing of some of the matches, they've learned that with no crowd or smaller crowds, they can't do these 20, 25-minute long back and forth matches so much. They have to trim it down, because without the ability to gauge a crowd and see if they need to do something to get a pop, to get them back into it, they don't know if the match is dragging. And then once you put it in the can, you throw it on TV, and it's like, oh, this match is dragging. It's too late. So they've gone back to only doing like 10, 12-minute matches at times, to try to like keep, to gauge what the TV audience at home would like. And that's something like WWE needs to do. Like, they can't keep doing these matches that run through commercial breaks, because if you don't have a crowd there, you can't tell if they're falling asleep. So you don't know if like you should call a spot at some point in time to like pop them and get them back into the match. Right?
You mentioned the fact that they're doing matches with commercial breaks. I remember when they were starting the whole empty arena thing, where they had Bayley and Sasha Banks going up against Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. When they were starting it, they were doing a commercial break, but in London, when they were doing a commercial break there, they sort of stopped and just hanged out a little bit and waited until the next commercial. Of course, they didn't know that that there was a commercial break in London, and they are seeing live feed from the performance center that they're just talking about and stretching and all that, and it was a bit of an insult to the whole wrestling audience in a way in London.
I didn't see that, but I can believe something like that would happen with this company, because they just don't think things through at times. I've noticed that they haven't tried to adjust. AEW tried to adjust more. I think when Ring of Honor is beginning to come back, they're coming in with a mindset of similar ideas of how you're going to tape things, how you're going to present things, right? To me, like, the one smart thing that WWE did do after a while was not doing live shows from Performance Center. Tape everything. Tape it, clean it up, cut out rough spots you don't need, cut out spots that drag, that aren't necessary, right? Like, but I'm serious. If you got a point where you think, all right, this match is a little bit long, well, let's put in 2 minutes of commercial, and then we'll come back in when the baby face is making the comeback. We're about to make the comeback, right? That way it runs smoother, and you can cut out bad spots. You can re-edit things. So take advantage of it that way. Doing it live in, an environment we don't have a live audience, I think they start getting lazy. And as you pointed out, some of that shows, right? You get bad edits. You get people on camera not in character, right? Not ready to do the show. The feed will cut in and out at the wrong time, or an audio clip will pick up of something that, ruins the moment, right? I say they should tape everything. Cut it, do it right, put it out there. You don't have an audience, so it's not like someone's going to tweet such and such went over, they're your new number one contender. It's going to be all hidden, right? Or you can do one better, something NXT did a couple times. Like with Johnny Gargano, I think it was Velveteen Dream at one point. They filmed 2 finishes because they didn't want to get out who was going to win a championship. So they filmed 2 finishes in front of the crowd down in Winter Park. So they were like, okay, when they air the tape, you're not going to know until like the last minute who's actually going to go over, because they filmed the match, they filmed the finish, and they went back and they filmed like the last 2 or 3 minutes of the match, and they did a completely different finish. So like they could do stuff like that. And then, if they have buyer's remorse and they feel like maybe they don't want this person to go over, they can go with the other person winning the match, right? And they can adjust accordingly. But they should take advantage of the fact that they could pre-tape these things.
Yeah, you mentioned the whole thing that they had to cut certain amount of time. You think they should have cut it out certain amount of time between the Edge Orton last man standing match at WrestleMania, because that was a bit.
That was a very interesting one because it did go extremely long, and I don't know if it went extremely long because there was no crowd there, or if it went extremely wrong because both guys just weren't used to doing that style of match and didn't recognize the pacing and how it got to a point where, and I think that's what exasperated it more, because it could have been pre-taped. I don't know if it was, but it could have been pre-taped. So some of the scenes, with Edge slowly taking his time to do the concerto spot, it was we could have saved 10 seconds here, right? Or some of the other moments where it could have been hey, cut. Can we get through this quarter a little bit quicker? You guys are taking way too long, beating each other up, and there's no crazy spots going on for another 3 or 4 minutes. Can we get to the next one, right? So I don't know if it was that. I also know that they need to realize that you have Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, who puts on, full count anywhere, no hold responsible, no holds barred, whatever they call those anything goes matches. And they're just incredible with their spots and their timing and their placement, right? And if it was one of those things hey, Edge and Randy Orton, you need to learn from them and see how their pacing goes in this style of match, because if they haven't done it in a while, they may be thinking about something that worked 20 years ago, but now you look at how guys do their no holds barred matches, maybe, it's that. And I remember people laid down the time and they said, well, the time was around the same. But you know what? Just because the time is the same doesn't mean the tempo is the same. Doesn't mean it felt the same, right? One match feels like an hour. One match felt like 15 minutes. They both could have been a 40-minute match. And that's the difference between, a bad match or a boring match and a good match that ends up getting 5 stars, right?
Yeah, well, when you mentioned that, I think the reason why they did this greatest match ever between Edge and Orton is to repair the damage that was with the last man standing match at WrestleMania, because it did take too long. It wasn't much of wrestling. It felt a little clunky at times. Even that set one spot in the gym when Orton had Edge in that equipment rope, and it was mostly like a noose, which was ominous to the whole Chris Benoit suicide issue. That was
I just said we didn't have to go into that.
Yeah, that was a bit creepy and downright insulting in a way.
That was something a lot of fans immediately thought of when they saw that.
Especially when they had that Dark Side of the Ring debut of the Hulk 2-part Chris Benoit thing. So
right, I know it was all around the same time. That was like very, very, that was something that didn't go over well. I agree with that. That did not sit well with people. But that, that aside, I mean, it is what it is. I'm not going to rip the match for that. I'll admit, I thought at some point it was dragging, but I think that's because when you look at the quote-unquote greatest match ever thing, because they are two extremely gifted technical wrestlers, and when they did that match, everyone pretty much loved it. And the reason why is that is their breadbasket. That's where they are excellent at, right? Edge hasn't wrestled in, what was it, 7 years or 8 years? I forget the timeline.
9, from what I can recall.
Okay, 9, fine. Yeah, he hadn't wrestled in 9 years. And Randy Orton is not known for doing a lot of, I know he's had some here and there, but he's not known for doing those like gimmick matches, which are like no holds barred or anything goes. Or Randy Orton's beauty is his ability to lull the audience properly. I mean this, as if he's telling them a story and get them invested into every little detail of a match that's going on. So, it was a task to ask them to work outside of their norm. I think doing it without a crowd, to me, the crowd would have helped them out more because I think they're mature enough as veterans that if they could tell the crowd wasn't reacting enough, they would know to like find some sort of object or call a spot that would have gotten the crowd back into it. So not having that feedback, I think, hurt. But I also think it's overkill to like really go in on that. I don't think it's, we should be spending too much more time, criticizing that match because it wasn't like it was horrible. It wasn't bad, right? It went a little long. The pacing was off. And I think partially the reason why it stood out too is because of the cinematic match with AJ Styles and The Undertaker. And when you saw that edited in a manner so that it had great pacing, I think more fans wanted to see matches like that, right? And I think that was a bigger lesson that WWE should have learned was if you're going to do non-in-ring matches and you can pre-tape stuff now because you don't have an audience, pre-tape it, edit it, make it like it's a TV show, make it like it's a movie, right? And it'll come over so much better with the audience.
Well, you did mention that the greatest wrestling of all time. I don't think counts as a cinematic match, but I think we all could agree on one thing, that the good thing that came out of the whole pandemic were those set cinematic matches. I mentioned the Boneyard match between AJ Styles and Taker and the Firefly Funhouse match between John Cena and The Fiend. But there are like other matches that were cinematic that were impressive at best. You had either the corporate Money in the Bank ladder match at Money in the Bank with both the men and women briefcases. You had the so-called Stadium Stampede you mentioned. You even had, from what I saw and heard in All Out, that Britt Baker versus Swole match in that dentist office. You've seen All Out, right, Pete?
No, Louis, I was at dinner with you last night, remember?
Well, you had it.
I haven't seen it out yet. I'm going to watch it tonight after your Zoom.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a cinematic match, just to let you know. And if you're going to see All Out, spoilers, in the middle it got a little uncomfortable.
Well,
anyways.
We don't talk about it till I watch it later tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. But anyways, as I was trying to say before, we had like some good cinematic matches. Of course, there were some bad ones, like say, for example, the Street Profits Viking Raiders at Backlash, which was cinematic, but not a match in general. And then you had that swamp fight between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt in this horror show at Extreme Rules, which was really jumping the shark in particular. I mean, yeah, a few bad cinematic matches, but there are like a lot of good out of the bad. But under all of your circumstances, what do you think of these said cinematic matches, whether it be in WWE or AEW or anything in particular? What do you guys think of the whole cinematic match experience?
Well, in a way, like the cinematic experience. Well, I actually want to go back to what Pete said about the taping it beforehand. I mean, in a way, I'm a little hesitant about that because of the thing. Like, I'm not sure what the word is for it, but like the danger of it being spoiled or leaked out on the internet, like the potential results, because that could basically like ruin the whole thing, you know, because one of the cons of taping an event is that there's a risk of the results being exposed or leaked on the internet, so it would kind of kill the whole thing.
But there weren't much of spoilers or anything exposed in a way. I mean, they were keeping it on the DL at least.
So 2 things you can do with that is, one, you can limit the number of people who are going to be at the taping or the screening. So that way, if something does leak, you can hopefully track down who that person was and take the necessary actions against him or her. The other one you can do is, like I mentioned with NXT has done this in the past, when they were going to do a title change on their regular show, but they would tape 4 to 6 episodes at one time. So if they were going to do a title change on their weekly show rather than a takeover event, it was obviously going to get out there. So sometimes what they could do is you tape 2 endings. So one ending you can tape Bray Wyatt going over. The other ending you can tape is Braun Strowman going over. That way, it's like, well, we've got 2 endings out there. Nobody knows which is which. And the third thing you can always do, if you really want to be careful and creative, right, is tape another one secretly or just when you're about to go live with the show so it can't seep out. And that's the one you put into your final cut. So there's a lot of ways you can trick people or keep it secret or do, things, under the wire if you want to pre-tape. Those are things that were done in the past. Like if you guys follow things like from years and years ago, they learned certain territories learned the importance of filming multiple matches that never aired, because they learned that, all right, if this tag team, if their contracts don't resign, if these guys get injured, if this happens, if that happens, whatever it might be, we have another match in the bag that we can throw into that episode. And that was stuff that, promoters had to learn back in the day, because you would tape stuff weeks in advance, and then they learned things would go wrong. And then it's like, oh, now what do we do? So there's options.
Yeah, because I think they usually like take these do these matches like weeks in advance, probably because of something that was planned ahead that the superstar did. Like a superstar that's getting married or something, they do like a kayfabe story so they could go on their honeymoon,
Right.
or for one of the WWE divas who's pregnant, she's taking time off,
Right.
so that she could be on maternity leave. So something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, that's true.
That's
The
one
fact
thing
that
yep.
the fact that they had to do tapings and put like different scenarios and the ends of the matches. Say, for example, the Great American Bash NXT. They had the Adam Cole versus Keith Lee for both the North American and the NXT championships. Now, from what I put together was they had to do like 2 different endings for those said matches. One being that Adam Cole wins both belts, or the other being Keith Lee winning both belts. But someone from the audience, pretty sure it's like a performance member, leaked it out online. I think it was in a Twitter feed or something, and WWE was completely irate that it was immediately spoiled after that. Now, I haven't seen it per se. Hell, I didn't even see the Great American Bash. I'm still trying to catch up on a lot of wrestling content in a way, because things have been hectic for me around here. But when the leak was announced, it was a bit shocking in a way. Wouldn't you all agree?
I didn't really hear about it. But if the point is the leak came out and said they filmed 2 endings, that's what you do. You film 2 endings so that if the leak does come out, the fans still don't know what the final outcome is going to be.
Mm.
You could even, if you want, you could film 5 endings, right? You can film the ending where Keith Lee goes over. You can film the ending where Adam Cole goes over. You can film the ending where it's a double DQ and no one wins the belts. You can film the ending where there's a dusty finish. You can film, the ending. So many, like you can film 4 or 5 different variations of that ending, right? And cut it together however you want to cut it together on the night of the show. And if people like say, well, it's going to end in one of 5 or 6 ways. Now, basically, it just sounds like fantasy booking, right? Now it's just us saying, well, this is how the match should end. If there's like 4 or 5 different variations filmed. I mean, that's all that you have to do. And Vince has gone out and made workers in the past, redo entire matches because they thought they were bad. He sent them out in front of a live crowd and said, this is my TV taping. Do the match again. And they're like, it's 35 minutes. He goes, well, do it again, except this time do it right. It's not uncommon for stuff like that to happen. And it's because it's all about TV and keeping the TV ratings up in place, right? Treat it more like a taped TV show. The biggest disadvantage of stuff leaking out was fans. And fans got not beholden to the notion that we shouldn't spoil it for the rest of the wrestling community. So they want to be the one like, oh my God, you'll never guess what happened, right? If they could tweet fast enough to say such and such is running through the crowd before the camera cuts to it, they would, right? So I think if you could find ways to, tape it, keep things under wraps. I mean, television series does things like that. This isn't just a wrestling thing, by the way. It's there have been television shows that have taped multiple endings to a series finale or a series episode, or even like movies. They'll tape multiple endings knowing that they can't keep it under wraps. So by taping all of these other red herrings, people are like, well, it could be this or it's going to be like that. So now it just sounds like rumor and conjecture, right? Or it's like it's not worth reporting on because for all you know, they taped 7 endings for us, and then when we all went home, they came back and they taped the real ending in private. So it's something that TV can teach WWE and AEW and Ring of Honor and anyone else who has this. It's something that TV producers and executives can go and be like, here's the way to film your product by ensuring that information won't leak out or won't hit the internet before you want to air it. And in WWE's advantage, they will film stuff a week or 2 in advance rather than 4 months ago, right? So they only have to keep things secret for 4 or 5 days, not 4 or 5 months.
You mentioned TV ratings, Pete. I want to mention this one part as well. Because of the whole COVID situation, ratings for both Raw and SmackDown, and sometimes both NXT and AEW, are pretty much at the lowest. And people are trying their best to try to boost the ratings up bit by bit. There were some personal things that kind of bumped the ratings up, like, say, Becky Lynch announcing her pregnancy live on the TV and all that. but they're also trying to set up like random things to keep people going, like say the Raw Underground or the SmackDown karaoke, or say other interesting stuff that anything we could do better between the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders. Hell, you even have matches that are supposedly good for a pay-per-view in the live shows for free. Like, say, for example, the Daniel Bryan AJ Styles for the Final Freedom Intercontinental Championship. That should have been on Backlash. Or, say, the unsanctioned match between Big Show and Randy Orton, or the bar fight between Sheamus and Jeff Hardy. Those two matches should have been on the Extreme Rules show because they were pretty much extreme in a way. But they put it on live TV just to boost the ratings. The only problem is none of these so-called gimmicks or any debuting star like say Matt Riddle or Retribution or anything else. It doesn't matter because there's one key ingredient that keeps the ratings up, and that's the crowds. That's the people cheering or booing them. That's the ones doing the whole ooh and ahs for those who take a bump. That's what keeps the ratings going. Not any of these gimmicks or debuts or anything else.
So the last few weeks, it was becoming abundantly clear that if AEW and if NXT had different nights of broadcast, both programs would push close to 1 million viewers. I think they've both been averaging anywhere between 800,000 and 900,000 the last few weeks when they weren't going head to head. And if you did that with enough prolonged effort, they both could possibly reach 1 million. And that's because they're the two shows that probably give the best product that audiences like to see. If you want to know why Raw and SmackDown are down, sure, the crowd helps. It adds to the production of the show. No, I'm not saying that. You need the crowd there to help out a little bit, to a lot of it. I understand all that. But the ratings have been dropping or have been taking hits well after the crowds disappeared. And also when both shows or all these shows have been trying different things to make it a more exciting presentation. And you're not seeing other sports hurt nearly as much as they thought they would without the crowds. What's hurting Raw and what's hurting SmackDown is the fact that the writing and production of the show and the storylines are not compelling enough for people to remain or come back or want to put up with this. And what they're coming up with these ideas as, to pull a rating boost, things like Raw Underground doesn't work, right? It turns more people off. I don't even know what SmackDown karaoke is. I've stopped watching since then. So,
well, from what I understand, I haven't watched it yet. I might get around to it, but they appear to be doing they did like a women's karaoke thing between some of the competitors that wish to take on Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship, and they were and one of these things are these so-called karaoke shows where Naomi was singing American Dream, Dusty Rhodes' American Dream, which was a bit uncomfortable considering that the two sons are in AEW in a way. Yeah, that is awkward.
I don't know what it is. I don't really care.
Okay.
I don't want to watch wrestling. I don't want to watch that on wrestling. I want to watch,
wrestling, right?
And if you watch NXT and if you watch AEW, you'll see that they produce a show where the outcome of matches build up to something else later. Somebody wins a match and it sets up another competition, which eventually goes somewhere, right? And in some cases, someone loses a match and it sets up an angle. that draws interest. Right? I mean, I'm watching AEW more than probably anyone else here, or rather, and any other like wrestling show that's out there right now. And so often, it's amazing to see how they've slowly identified and build, feuds quietly, but just through simple little actions of a win or a loss, or this thing happened or that thing happened, right? Just building these tiny little, just building blocks, for lack of a better term. Just put a little thing here, and here, and suddenly you're like, wow, here's a story, or here's a character. Where does he fit in through all of this, right? And you can find a path that gets you from the show you watched in April to the show you're watching in July. And that's what keeps you interested. The WWE shows, things just happen because you need things to happen.
Yeah. Although the only other issue is that certain stars won't be able to partake in so-called certain shows, like say for example NXT UK, or any of the British wrestlers that were from different venues, say Jay White or Walter or the Bruiserweight or anyone else or Pac. Everyone, or those types of wrestlers live in England or in Ireland, and with the travel restrictions, it's difficult for them to get going. Now, I haven't watched New Japan Wrestling 2020 yet. I'm still trying to get through the 2019s. But from what I can understand, Bullet Club had a leader in Jay White, and considering that he's not gonna go to any of those shows because of travel restrictions, and this is my thought, that in my head, that they decided to put Evil from Los Ingobernables de Japón into the Bullet Club and be the supposed leader, I believe, during the whole Japan Cup.
White is back in the country now. I think he started to wrestle again.
Well, but back then they can't bring Jay White because of the restrictions.
Well, what they can't do is you can't travel back and forth, right? You had to make a call. And what really was with Jay White's position was Jay White, if he has choice between living in New Zealand or Japan through COVID, he lived in New Zealand because Japan had an early big hit, number one. New Zealand did an excellent job, or at least has been doing an excellent job in containing it, right? So living in New Zealand was much better. And the reason that travel restrictions became an issue is you had to make a choice. There were some European wrestlers who are still in AEW now because they live in Florida. They purchased or rent a home in Florida and they live there. So they didn't worry about having to travel home often. But if you were in a position where you would travel between one country and another, you had to choose which one you really wanted to be in, because that's where the travel restriction would come in. If there was a long period where you couldn't get out, or if you had a quarantine, or, that was like one of the deals with taping everything down in Florida, right? You could bring everyone in, you can quarantine them, you could tape for 2 weeks, you can quarantine them again, and then they could go home and then maybe come back, right? I believe that's why Sami Zayn hasn't been on TV, because getting in and out of Canada is a problem. So he would have to choose to live in the U.S. or live in Canada. These are like you're right with these are the items to take. But like Jay White, I believe he's back right now. But the Evil thing was a big shock. I think the main thing was they were looking to push Evil to like a new level. And I think this was the opportunity that they had. You saw it last year that they wanted to do more with Evil and Sonata. I was I'm pretty sure the show I saw in New York, Evil pinned Okada in the match, or at least took him out. But or he pinned Ibushi and Sonata took him out. They were in the tag team, but those two guys basically took down Okada and Ibushi in the main event. So, I mean, you have those guys going over, two of the biggest stars out there. I mean, you're getting ready to push them to the next level. And I think, too, that Bullet Club is getting away from the whole die-in, or whatever the proper term is, a notion of foreigners only in the Bullet Club. Yeah, they're still going to have that level of faction, but I think financially it doesn't make sense for them, because you end up promoting Americans and Europeans in your club, in your product, and then they can take huge money to go back home. That's what's happening, because the Bullet Club is the most popular, or one of the most popular factions in New Japan, outside of their local territory, outside Japan rather. So if you're going to put people who are American and European and Australian in the Bullet Club and make them superstars, don't be surprised that when you have a federation in their home nation that wants to make a big financial push, suddenly they're going to offer these superstars huge amounts of money. And I think that that's what kind of happened with like AEW, because if you look at it, at the time, these are the people that were pretty much in Bullet Club that were American based. You had, or American / European based, I should say. But you had the Young Bucks, you had Kenny Omega, you had Adam Cole, who went to NXT, and you had the American Nightmare, right? And I believe Adam Page was also in it at one time. I can't remember. But you had all of those guys, and look how many of them left New Japan around the same time.
Yeah, you mentioned about Sami Zayn deciding to take time off, but there was also another superstar that took time off because of the whole pandemic. That is Roman Reigns. Now, I'm pretty sure all of you could agree with me on this one, so I wanted to hear your own personal thoughts. But Roman Reigns was supposed to face Goldberg for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania. Now, controversy aside, Goldberg being the Fiend for the title at Super Showdown was a bit questionable at best, even if it leads to a match. It was supposed to be the Fiend versus Roman Reigns, but they moved on to Goldberg because it felt like pretty much a dream match. But then, during the whole pandemic, they kept going with this said match. They had the interview with Cole at the first empty arena. They had the contract signing. They had like specific things here, interviews here and all there. But then when say The Miz in a way got sick, and that one of the Usos noticed it and told Roman about it, that it was unprofessional, that Roman made the decision. I don't know if it was during the whole taping of the WrestleMania or anything else within the or beforehand, but he decided to sit this one out. Decided to leave the company just to look out for his family and his own health. And so because of that, they had no one else to face Goldberg, which is the reason why they brought in Braun Strowman, which was a big red flag because of that. Not to mention that they didn't make any explanation as to why Roman decided to leave, let alone why Braun Strowman decided to show up for that match in particular, considering that he was nowhere near the title picture or nowhere near WrestleMania in general. They decided to just make the announcement that it was a change, that it was going to be Goldberg versus Braun Strowman for the Universal Championship, and they moved on. What the actual fuck? Jeez. What are you guys' opinions about that decision, being that Roman, which took the smart path and decided to just sit this one out and wait it out until the whole pandemic passes, or that WWE can get their shit together, and decided that they just make the announcement of Braun Strowman versus Goldberg, and boom, that's all.
Hey, Louis?
Yeah?
Hey, I have to go now.
You have to go now?
Yeah.
What do you think about the whole meeting so far?
It was good. I enjoyed it.
All right. That's nice to know. Well, I hope to see you soon in art class. Sorry I had to keep you waiting for too long.
It's okay. I'll see you on the 15th. I believe that's the art class starts.
Of course. No problem. I'll see you later too. Anyways, back to the point of the whole Braun Strowman situation. What you guys think of Roman Reigns sitting this one out, which was a smart thing, and that Braun Strowman decided to be the last-minute replacement in a way?
I think it was a smart decision, you know. I mean, because Roman was following his instincts, you know. I figured maybe this isn't gonna turn out the way I anticipated, so I'm just gonna sit this one out, you know.
And you think having Braun Strowman as the last-minute replacement without any explanation as to why he's in that match was fair?
Who should it have been, Louis?
What do you say? Should have been?
Yeah, because, well, you have AJ Styles and Undertaker doing a program. You had Edge and Randy Orton doing a program. You had John Cena and Bray Wyatt doing a program. So who did you want to pull out of a program to go up against Goldberg? Did you see what I'm getting at? Like, who? What do we do? You're saying you want to pull Finn Balor back up and have him go against Goldberg? Do you want to? I can't even think. Do you want to get Daniel Bryan in there? Do you like? I guess I'm trying to understand. Who is it that you wanted to go up against Goldberg? I think what they thought of was you put the other biggest monster who could flatten people out there.
Which would be Braun Strowman.
Yeah.
A monster among men.
Exactly. And it was just, you're going to put the two biggest pieces of meat out there and just let them slap each other back and forth. I mean, for the time in which you had to do, I don't think you could have come up with a better option, right?
Yeah, but still, the way they announced it was a bit cheap and lazy in a way. Just they didn't mention anything as to why Roman Reigns is out, and they didn't mention anything as to why Braun Strowman's comebacks in. It felt a little pathetic the way they handled that.
But you still can't give me away as they should. That's the point. I don't have a problem with them bringing Braun in. I think they should have been more honest in talking about why Roman Reigns left. I think they should have done more there. But the way they think, they assume by saying nothing, they could bring him back as a heel and it would work, and that's what they're doing now, and we're getting the same storyline that we had with Brock Lesnar, right? And I'm not interested in that at all, right? I would have much rather, you know, when Reigns came back, you brought him back as the babyface, and you actually did a kayfabe like Vince is now pissed at him, you know, and treating him bad and making him send him down to NXT. Like, that to me would have been funny. He had to go and work at NXT. That would have been great. And build it up so that when Royal Rumble comes around, he wins like the NXT spot in the Rumble. And that's when he starts making a comeback. But I mean, they want to do it this way. That's fine. It's the same heel gimmick that, you know, basically you were doing with Brock, because, you know, they just go to the well too often. They're just like, oh, this works, let's try that. Oh, this works, let's stick with that. Oh, this works, that's the only option, right?
Richard, I'm pretty sure you're listening to everything. What do you think about the whole Braun Strowman situation? The fact that Roman Reigns decided to sit this one out, which was a smart decision, and the fact that they decided to have Braun Strowman in WrestleMania against Goldberg for the Universal Championship with no reason other than because.
I think Kevin Bond's drumming against Bill Goldberg was really kind of good.
Really?
It was-
Especially if it's a two
it
and a
was
half
the-
minute dumpster fire?
Because it was actually Braun Strowman's, it was a little bit his time to win a, a major title.
Yet he wasn't even near the top picture, let alone WrestleMania in general. In fact, on No Way Out, when there was crowds, he was going up against a triple threat match between Zayn, Nakamura, and Cesaro for the Intercontinental Championship in a 3-on-1 handicap match, and he lost. And yet he didn't get much of a rematch. Instead, they gave him the title just because one person that was supposed to be facing Goldberg decided to just head on home.
But you just said yourself, Louis, he was a recent Intercontinental Champion. You want to believe old school WWE type of rule book logic and any other wrestling federation rule book logic, you're a secondary and tertiary, if you have them, champions usually are a top 5 contender automatically for the world belt. You usually don't see the title for title match all too often because they're constantly defending him as such because they have that duty to do so. But the fact that a month ago he was the Intercontinental Champion, I see that as a good enough reason to be like well, we got to throw somebody in. I mean, Roman Reigns isn't going to work, okay? He can't work. He has a medical history that it was advisable for him not to be around that many people at that time. So now you have Goldberg who needs a match. Who do you put in there?
Yeah, he might have a point, but there could be other certain stars that aren't in the car that should have been with Goldberg. Hell, you would have put Ricochet in that match just to give him a second chance, considering that what happened with him at Super Showdown was a bit of an iffy situation. Or better yet, have like an NXT star to take on Goldberg, like say Adam Cole or
no, because everyone knows that person's not going to win. It's not going to. So do you? It's most likely been disproven, but there's still some rumor to it that might be true. Was that the reason why Paul Orndorff wasn't on the WrestleMania 3 card was because prior to that, I believe it was, he did a huge program with Hulk Hogan, and they did great numbers. And the reason they didn't want to put him on the card was in case if Andre the Giant wasn't able to work the event. And that's pretty much been disproven because Andre worked for like half a decade after, right? But the idea being is, why would you not have this one superstar on? Well, the reason why is if you feel you have somebody who's injured or can't make it, you then take that person out and you want to have someone ready to go who can draw just as much attention. And the reality of it all is with Goldberg in there, they wanted Goldberg to put over a big monster, okay? That was the plan. You said yourself, the spear versus the spear. It was Goldberg was going to put over Roman Reigns, and that was supposed to be a big moment, right? Well, Roman Reigns isn't doing it. Goldberg, who do you think would be worthy to put over? I'll put over the biggest guy we have in the company, right? The big strong man. Goldberg's not going to put over Ricochet. I love Ricochet. I think he's great, but let's be honest, WWE doesn't see him as the world champion right now, right? And what they want to see in their world title match is big dudes beating each other up. So you got to give this title to a big dude. Now, maybe you have a point if this was Ricochet, when it was the hustle, or maybe you would have had the point in bringing up an NXT talent if it was 3 years ago or 4 years, I forget the timeline, when legitimately the 2 biggest stars in the company were Finn Balor and Bayley. They were the 2 biggest stars. They were the ones everyone really wanted to see, right? So at that point in time, you still had Finn Balor as the NXT champion, and you said, you know what? Let's surprise Goldberg and bring the Demon out, okay, because he would have been the biggest star. And you would have been putting the belt on your biggest star. But you got to look at it from the standpoint of, all right, Braun Strowman is a guy that the WWE believes in. And it's the type of guy they could see as a champion. Get the belt on him. That's what it came down to. You're not going to go and put it on someone who's working the WWE main event every week, right? That's not going to happen. And kind of to your point, maybe if you had more talent that you developed into stars, you would have options like that you could take advantage of, right? Mm-hmm. You would have been able to say, you know what? Let's go do a crazy match one day. Just throw 5 or 6 guys out there. And let's see, after the match, who the internet buzzes over the most. And then we'll write that storyline to say this person wins the title shot against Goldberg. Similar to like how, Ali got injured and Kofi had to come in and say, Kofi, you're the veteran, you're the guy. We need you to general the Elimination Chamber match. And the place went crazy. And backstage said, why is everyone going crazy? And people said, because Kofi's over. He's funny. He's charismatic. He's beloved for years. And all he ever does is put on great matches. So when the fans thought he could win the title, they went crazy for it, right? If you had enough stars, you could do something like that. But they were limited. All their biggest stars were in programs.
Yeah, I guess supposedly that's correct. I mean, I would have gone for a Goldberg Baron Corbin thing and have him win it just so he can extend the Roman Reigns, but that's my personal opinion. Anyways, we're a little more pressed for time. Just one question from all of you. I want you all to remove their audio. Once everything goes back to normal and people are going to go back to the usual self before the whole pandemic, you think wrestling is gonna recover from all this
I think so. I think they will. I mean, even if they are a $1 billion industry, they're gonna recover. I mean, that just like with the movie theaters, now that the movie theaters are slowly opening back up, they will recover. I mean, obviously not overnight, but little by little, they'll get back to how they were pre-COVID.
Richard, same question?
I would have to say a maybe.
A maybe?
Yes.
You want to explain why?
I mean, the 50-50 chance right now for the WWE and All Elite Wrestling is 50-50 chance.
50-50 chance. Okay, and Pete, what do you think?
AEW a couple weeks ago already announced how they were banning certain fans for trying to sell their block of tickets for an upcoming event in smaller allotments than they were allowed. And that goes to show you that there are people who want to buy and go and see, and that there are people who are interested in the plan in which companies like this are willing to embark on to ensure that fans can go.
Yeah, I can understand why they were banned, because what they were doing was illegal, right?
Correct. That is correct. Absolutely. It was absolutely illegal. And they were like, we don't support it. We don't want to get in trouble for it. You hit the nail right on the head, man. And because of that, it shows people are already looking to skirt the system and break the laws and whatever to see wrestling live. People have signed up for that Thunderdome to see wrestling live somehow. I think once we start rolling out the rules, everything is going to be fine. Right? I'll be honest with you. There's already shows going out, like indie shows going out. There was about, I don't know, maybe a month ago, there was a show in AC that popped up at the last minute, which, I was looking at trying to debate whether I wanted to drive down there and risk it or not. Right. And if Galway opens up doing their indie shows again, and there's a good card that comes in, I might go down there for a Saturday evening or Friday evening to go check out a show because I want to see these things. And if areas in New York City, if they start finally opening up some of their clubs to these shows again, yeah, it's people are going to go. It's just a question of what the rules are going to be, right? And whether or not that's going to impact the premium. You're not going to see 20,000 seat stadiums filled to capacity anymore. All right. What you probably will see from WWE, this is what I think they should do. They should set up Thunderdome on camera, and then they should start selling behind the hard cams, 4-pack, 6-pack, 8-packs. So like a group of us can go to a show, right?
Mm-hmm.
We buy we all feel like we've lived together, hung out together enough. We're a close family. We know how to isolate within ourselves. We buy like a lot for up to 8 seats. Maybe 4 of us go, 5 of us go, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you buy up to 8 seats, 5 or 6 of us go. We sit in, we just loaf out there. We can grab our beer and our chicken fingers and we can watch the event, right?
Right. Well, I'm pretty sure if Jimmy was here, he would have understand that even if he's not a fan of wrestling, it's understandable that maybe places could be recovered, like movie theaters and malls and all. After all, I went to like a mall in Wayne yesterday. They were open and they had social distancing and masks and stuff together. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure he could agree with all of us that maybe there's a chance that wrestling would recover in a way. But that's my opinion. I'm pretty sure he has his own. Regardless, I think that'll be it for the whole conversation on wrestling and how COVID affected. So I'm hoping maybe one day we might be able to meet up again, maybe discuss something else in a way. I'll let you guys know if we might speak about something else, whether it be wrestling or not.
All right.
Sounds
All right,
good.
so that's it with our little discussion. I'd like to thank Robert, Richard, Pete, and of course Jimmy for sharing their own personal opinions between the whole COVID and wrestling situation. And I think that'll be it. Stay tuned for more videos, and we'll see you all next time. #Read the Good Cartoons.
All right. You take care, man. Bye-bye.